Hello and welcome to episode number 43 of the Rollo and Slappy Show. Today is June 19th, 2017. I am Rollo McFlugel, and with me is Slappy Jones 2. We are both of McFlugel.com. The show notes page for this episode, as it is always, is the McFlugel.com/43. So it's always the episode number after the normal URL. So instead of, did I say 43? It is 44. It's a good thing I did keep talking about it, because then I wouldn't have caught that. Apologies there. So it's the show notes page for this episode is McFlugel.com/44. So before I mess anything else up, I'm going to hand it right over to Slappy, and he's going to introduce our topic.
Thanks, Rollo. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Today's episode, we're going to be geared toward our libertarian listeners a little more than we normally do, I guess. We're going to talk about a little bit of libertarian infighting that's going on right now. About 6 months ago or so, maybe even a little before that, the border wasn't really a big issue. We kind of thought, all right, you're either in favor of the state or you're a minarchist. And if you're a minarchist, you're the night watchman. You want the military and police and borders. And if you're an anarchist, you don't want any state borders. But somehow, somewhere along the line, we got this big split in the libertarian movement where now you have people who consider themselves anarchists saying they want state borders and they want a strong border and they have the right to keep people out. And you have others saying, no, we don't need state borders. People should be, the state doesn't own the property, so therefore they can't keep people off it. And then there's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of straw manning and name calling. And to all you non-libertarians out there, you may be rolling your eyes and laughing, but it is kind of an important issue just for, the way we think about things. So Rollo and I are both open borders libertarians. And I think we do a good job articulating our point. But this episode is really going to be more based on the inner workings of this argument, I think. And so I'm going to kick it back to Rollo. What do you think of what's going on here? Do you think we're wasting our time arguing this? Do you think it's worth it? Are you ready to quit? Did they convince you yet? Are you actually a communist?
Well, I think if they call me communist one or two more times, that's probably going to convince me that I'm wrong.
Yeah, because if you just keep saying it, then, I guess you'll just join the CPUSA.
Absolutely. So one of the things I want to make the distinction of is the difference between the debate on the borders and the arguments on the borders. And, maybe I'm splitting hairs with these definitions, but it really doesn't matter. I just want to make a distinction between the two things. So the debate, I think, is good and it's fine. I think it's important that we discuss these issues. If there's libertarians that don't see eye to eye on things, and let's talk about it. Let's sort it out. And I think when we're talking among each other in the libertarian movement, I think we can hone our skills pretty well, because hopefully we have better arguments about the state and about the market than non-libertarians do, who, no offense to anyone else, but most people don't care about this stuff like we do. So we should.
They don't think about it. Yeah.
Right.
You don't think about it. You have a president, you vote for him, you assume he's good or bad, but you assume the office is good, and you just go about your life because you don't think about these things. There's nothing malicious about that way of thinking.
Right. So presumably, since we care and think more about this kind of stuff, we might, a little better argument. So it's good. It's good to have that debate. And if you want to call it infighting, whatever it is.
Yeah, no, I use that term because that's the term that's thrown around. But
right.
I agree with you that talking these issues out is one, it's enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you have a good debate with solid arguments, it makes you think, and sometimes reconsider my own positions when I get in a debate with someone who makes great points.
Now, on the flip side of that, when instead of having a debate and discussing these ideas, you're having more of an argument, which is what a lot of this has turned into. I think that's a lot less productive as far as, because you're not going to convince, it's like, it'd be like arguing with Bernie Sanders about whether or not the government should do program XYZ.
Or
You're never going to change his mind.
Right. And I think you and I mean, I know I was like this back in the McCain running for president days. Would have some pretty stupid arguments with Democrats over Barack Obama versus John McCain.
Right.
You know, it gets you nowhere, and you don't convince anyone. And you just get mad at the other guy, and you're wasting your time.
Right. But and then you if you follow what I write about and what I write on Twitter and Facebook, you say, "Oh, Raleigh, you're being a big hypocrite because you engage these people and argue back and forth about it." And yeah, I do. It's true, and I'm going to continue to do that because my feeling is that there might be people kind of on the sidelines watching who are on the fence maybe and not really sure about what they feel about it. And if the open borders people aren't there to kind of correct and give their side of the story, then I think those people will be more easily led to go along with the closed borders pro-state position. Because sometimes, I mean, they do make, they're not great. It's like anything else. If you're not familiar with it and you just take what they're saying for granted, then if you're not paying attention, you can easily be led astray. I guess. I don't know.
I guess I'm kind of surprised that some prominent libertarians, guys with PhDs who are very successful in the libertarian movement, are kind of making some of the arguments for the closed borders, because it doesn't really seem to make sense or follow. If you're against the state, I guess I'm not from this isn't my bend, but the way I understand what they're saying is if you let too many immigrants in, they could potentially change. No, not potentially. It's suicide is what we're told. Letting too many immigrants in is suicide because they'll kill your culture and make it a socialist country. They'll vote for things, vote for more welfare. They'll change. They'll even implement Sharia law if they come from the Middle East. What are some of the other popular ones we hear? The fact that since in a stateless society there would be private borders, we don't live in a stateless society, therefore the borders are legitimate, or we have a right to defend these borders. Or there's a lot of what I find to be silly arguments. It's like saying because in a free society we would have security forces, therefore we should support the police and everything they do. Not too many libertarians make that argument, but for some reason when it comes to borders, they just switch everything they talk about and say, well, yeah, we would have private borders, so therefore the government needs to defend these borders that are not private.
And it's always the same pro-state arguments. Usually are typically kind of the same thing if you strip it down. So what do they say about the borders? They're saying that, oh, it's going to be really bad this time with all the millions of immigrants coming in to, like you said, institute Sharia law, commit terrorism, or turn the country socialist. And that's why we need the state to do something. Well, isn't that the same argument for anything? We can't have too much. We need to have some government regulation because if you had the market too free, then a business is going to come in and monopolize everything, or this certain bad thing's going to happen. It's the same thing over and over again. And if we're told, if those libertarians are laughing at those statist arguments, but then they give use the exact same logic for this, isn't isn't it on them to prove why the logic should be different this time?
Should. Instead, you get arguments like, well, no, we don't want any state borders, and they'll come back and say, so then you don't believe in private property because private property has borders. And you make it clear, and you may be laughing, but this is true, and this happens constantly to the point I'm tired of it, and I don't even want to deal with them. And that's why we even thought of doing this episode, because
we're really frustrating. We're really doing our best not to be hypocrites and straw man the other side. Now, there could be people who favor closed borders, and they make different arguments. And if you have a nuanced argument that's not one of these that we're talking about, please let us hear it, because We'd love to hear something better than what we've been getting, but we're really trying hard not to straw man these things. So it may sound like we're exaggerating and being ridiculous, but we're not.
No, we're not.
If you want us to pull it up or direct you to people who make these arguments, by all means,
we will show you.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I tweeted out something the other day where I said, you know, if you're a libertarian who believes that the state should enforce the borders, then show me where you've solved the economic calculation problem. Because that's the reason why the state isn't capable of really doing anything correctly. That there were some people being like, oh, but what about, you know, they come back with against that, and it's okay, well, you can't just brush that aside and say, well, what about Sharia law? What about terrorism? No, well, okay, let's say those things are a problem. Like, that doesn't mean the government's the best equipped to solve it. I mean,
Right.
you're going against the most basic of principles that you apparently subscribe to.
And I don't think that this argument, because I'm going to call it an argument, not a debate. I don't think that this argument. I would be more okay with the other side if they said something like, "Look, we're all ANCAPs. We all want to get to a stateless society. This, in my opinion, is the tactic we should use and go get it." And I understand what you're saying. You don't want the government to do anything. You don't want it to provide welfare. You don't want it to provide the roads, and you don't want to provide a police force on the border to keep people out. And that makes sense. I agree. But if we have that view, we're never going to get there. So we need to use the state to get there. Of course, I think that's still incorrect, but I would be certainly more understanding of it. But instead, the response is, you're a communist who doesn't believe in any borders. You don't like property rights. Property rights is the foundation of libertarian. And if you don't believe in property rights, when no one's made that argument that I have seen, are you aware of any of these open borders libertarians? And I'm not talking about left anarchists. I'm talking about people who call themselves libertarians or ANCAPs ever making the argument that property borders should not exist.
Nope.
Neither am I. I haven't seen it anywhere, and I don't know why that this other side of the argument continues to make that claim when we've expressed what we're talking about countless times. It sounds like there's got to be something else going on. The fact that they can't say, yeah, that's good, but I don't think it'll work, so I think I should use the state. That would be more debating, right? Then we can debate the tactics to get to a stateless society, but that's not happening.
Right. And sometimes they'll kind of make that argument, and
okay, good, because I haven't seen it. So
well, I mean, it'll be kind of there, but then they'll just do all the other stuff we've been saying. Like,
what about constantly called a communist? That's obviously frustrating to me.
Like what they used to say, this was the common catchphrase, and you still hear it around. It's like, oh, well, I want open borders too, but you can't have open borders with a welfare state. And it's
right.
Like, okay, well, but then normally you don't really have any sort of interest in actually discussing that from the other side. And it's great because there's a lot of these closed border advocates that claim to be Hoppians and that they read Hans Hermann Hoppe, and that's who's saying that we can close the borders and blah blah blah, and because making arguments because of immigration, and as Hoppe said it, that we need to close the borders. Well, let me read a quote from Hoppe. From the source is On Free Immigration and Forced Integration from LouRockwell.com, and he says, It would also be wrong-headed to attack the above case for free immigration by pointing out that because of the existence of a welfare state, immigration has become to a significant extent the immigration of welfare bums who, even if the United States, for instance, is below her optimal population point, do not increase but rather decrease average living standards. For this is not an argument against immigration, but against the welfare state. To be sure, the welfare state should be destroyed root and branch. However, in any case, the problems of immigration and welfare are analytically distinct problems, and they must be treated accordingly. End quote.
So that's the guy they constantly go to. Right.
And not that, you can just read a quote from, Mr. A PhD libertarian or something, and not taking anything away from Hoppe, but they're constantly, normally when they say stuff like that, there's an appeal to authority. So there's one of their main authorities that they use that is pretty clear that, all right, that doesn't leave out the discussion about closing the borders, because Hoppe does make arguments in favor of closing the borders, but you can't say that because Hoppe says that you can't have open borders until you end the welfare state. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. But it just goes to show that a lot of these people are just speaking on absolute ignorance and are not well read at all. Not even well read of the people they are quoting or claim to be subscribers of. There's actually someone who's calling himself a Hoppe libertarian, and then when someone asked what has he read, he said, actually, I haven't hadn't read anything from him, but I saw some videos.
Yeah.
It's like I don't think there's this level of, how many books do you have to read before you can become a libertarian, whatever. But
if you call yourself a Hoppian, you probably should have read him at some
right.
point. Or
it's absurd.
And I think that argument with the welfare, I can understand that, and I can understand people taking that view that we can't have a welfare state if people are just going to be able to come in and then benefit from the welfare state. I completely understand that. But like Hans Hermann Hoppe said, that's a problem with the welfare state, not with the people coming in.
Right, because citizens of the country can have kids, and then they enter into the country through birth and start taking welfare too.
Right, and yeah, exactly. People who are on welfare have children.
They're incentivized to have children often.
Right, and there's no difference in someone crossing a border or a baby being born, other than the fact that one person walked or took a boat or flew or whatever, and another was born. It's the same thing economically. There's no difference. Not too many people would say, well, maybe some people would say it, but I haven't really seen the argument where everyone who is receiving welfare should also become sterile and not be allowed to have kids. I mean, that's
certainly. I've made that argument or counterpoint a lot to people, and it's normally not greeted by anything other than silence.
Then you're a communist.
Right.
The other thing, if you're so concerned about the culture, don't you think we should be looking inside? Another point, and I've talked to Rollo about this in conversation, but, I might be more sympathetic to the border case if we were really close to having this libertarian society we talk about. Like if we're right on the edge and like a couple million people could just derail it and start voting for things and, just crush this libertarian locomotive that's coming through and taking over the United States. But the truth is it's not. Talk to anyone you work with, unless you work in some strange place where there's only libertarians. I don't know where that is, but we're not close to a libertarian society, and someone coming from some other country, I don't think is going to make the difference. I think we have a real problem internally. And when you talk about culture, I think most people who are saying this would call themselves socially conservative. But I could be wrong, but that's what I think.
Which is what we are, by the way. I mean, I would
totally,
consider us
I would
very
say,
socially conservative in a personal sense.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a former neocon, right? And that's the stereotypical neocon is very conservative everywhere. Or I don't know. I don't know what the stereotype is of the of the Republican Party, but I would definitely consider myself socially conservative. But just look at the own culture in the United States over the last 50 years or 200 years or whatever, and see how much it has changed internally. So if you're so bent on keeping culture, look at inside the country and how it's changing and who's doing what, and see where the problems are, because we can always look back to the government and the laws they're creating. And that's who we should be fighting, not people from Mexico or wherever else they're coming in. Canada, or I don't know. What are the ones they're complaining about? All those Canadians coming in I know.
But I want to know, because the argument is, if they come in, they're going to turn the country socialist, and we have to preserve the culture, as though and that implies that the culture of the United States is not currently socialist.
That the culture of the United States wasn't dying to put Bernie Sanders up for president.
Yeah, I mean it's extremely socialist right now. We have somewhat of a market economy, well, pieces of it, but I mean, look at how much government is in our lives. You tell me that's not socialism, and we'll even spread it out a little bit and say it's fascist too, because it's both, even though they're both have the same roots. So I think it's not much of a distinction to make. But I mean, there's so much socialism in our lives that how can you say that? And it's not coming from immigrants; it's coming from people that lived here forever. It's not even a real argument. It's not based on anything. It's just based on this emotional appeal to be like, oh, we're going to have some socialist banana republic or whatever. Yeah. We let these people in, but
like we're on the edge of getting rid of all these healthcare regulations. If we could just keep the immigrants out, but they're going to come in and want single payer.
Right. I mean, these are ironically, it seems like a lot of these people that are favor closed borders because they don't want all the socialists coming in are also people that tend to be like, oh, Trump can actually do some good. And you bring up healthcare and look what all the wonderful stuff he's done so far.
If Hillary would have won, we'd be at war in Syria and we'd still have Obamacare. Thank you, Trump.
Right.
I mean, give me a break. Trump's going to do about as much as anyone else has for change.
Right. And just to continue on the cultural thing a little bit, but to change it up, as you were saying before we went on, was the culture of the United States in the 1950s like what it is now? So to act like we need this static culture in the country is insane.
It's absurd.
It's never been that way. And do we want it to be static or do we want it to be changing? And not that every change in the culture is necessarily good, but one thing I'm pretty confident to say that the reason the culture changed from the 1950s to today isn't because we let in some immigrants. It was all done internally. Yeah, but even still, I mean, we did look at the difference between the way people felt about Italian Americans in the 1950s compared to how they do now, or Irish. Even before that, it's because
you look at
we all know the Irish need not apply signs, but basically every new immigrant group is discriminated against. So, I mean, again, what's the difference this time?
The difference this time is it's today and we're living it. We can read stories about the past and just, gloss over it and not have a connection to it. But it's really just the same thing repeated.
Yep.
And I'm guessing we'll have similar results where our government will continue to move to the left as it has since 1776. And it won't really be much changing.
Yeah, I mean, really for me, the only old stuff that I like is music equipment and tractors.
What year?
1971.
It's a good year for tractors.
Even earlier for the music equipment, but
all right.
We don't need to have two things I need to mention every episode.
Yeah, you got your $20. Don't worry about it.
I know.
All right. So, anything else to add on this little argument going on in the libertarian community?
Yeah, I have two little things I jotted down. One was it's always the same thing. Whenever there's some infighting about whatever topic, people are saying, "Oh, we can't have the infighting because it's not going to reflect well on everyone else." I don't mean to downplay us, libertarians in the movement, but no one outside is reading our Twitter. Like, unless people want to engage us, no one in the outside world has any idea what's going on within the libertarian movement as far as the infighting. So it's not reflecting poorly on other people that don't care about us anyway.
Agreed.
And I say that at every time there's infighting. Hopefully, maybe one day we'll get to the point where people start caring, but I don't think it will matter.
Yeah.
if we're because we'll already have our a foothold. But and then the other thing is if these closed borders people can't do anything but straw man our views and make up terrible arguments for this kind of stuff, what are they doing for everything else? How trustworthy or how strong are they on the other positions? it makes it really weakens to
It
me.
hurts.
It weakens their base if they can't
completely hurts their
understand.
credibility in my eyes.
Right. If they can't put all of this together, and how else are they going to be swayed out of this? And with the this is a whole nother thing, but this whole fascist movement,
that's going to
just
be a flash in the pan. That's not going to be.
I know.
That's a trendy fad that'll
Yeah.
be gone in a year.
but like all the libertarians identifying as anarcho-fascists, like, are you kidding? So it's not as bad, obviously, as the fascist thing, but it's kind of the same deal where it really just makes you question everything about them. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
I didn't actually finish writing that point down, so I don't even know what I was
you
trying to get at.
started it. Good,
Yeah.
good. You're prepared.
I know.
Yeah, that's all I have. I'm tired of the argument. I'm fine with the disagreement. I'm fine with the debate, but the constant, you don't believe in property borders, you're a communist, which then gets returned as you're in favor of a big police state, and you want to, I don't know what else our side says as a straw man, but of course it gets out of hand. I'm not going to say we're all angels over here and they're the ones, we're all doing it, and it's annoying, and I'm tired of it. And if you want to debate us on the points and you want to respond to some of the things that Rallo has written, because he's done some excellent work on it,
Thank you.
You go check it out. We'll link it on the show notes page. And if you disagree, respond, but don't respond with "you're a communist." Respond with a quote and say why he's wrong, and we'll be happy to debate you on it.
Absolutely. What was I just going to say? I had another great little point I wanted.
Of course, it was a great point.
Yeah. No, and it's just that, we say all this stuff. I'm not going to stop defending the open border stuff, because it is a lot of fun to have people making this argument, and then you write an article rebutting it, and then then all of a sudden there's a new argument they make, and they abandon the old one, which means they have no answer against the rebuttal. So
yeah,
the fact that they keep having to change what their argument is says a lot.
Count it as a win.
Absolutely. I can add another mark on my Internet Arguments 1
Yes.
little board.
Another little check behind your desk.
Yeah.
All right.
So, all right, before we get...
If you've seen that meme, it's actually a drawing of Rallo McFlute.
Yes. The reason I brought that up, because when I was texting you yesterday or today, it, for whatever reason, went to the very beginning of our text conversation.
Nice.
And that was there, and I kind of got a chuckle out of it.
Yeah, it's actually pretty funny.
It's
but anyway, free market story. You got one?
You had one.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I was in the supermarket earlier last week, I guess, a couple days ago, getting some cereal for myself and my kids, looking at all the selection, all the tons of different kinds of cereals they have in a supermarket. And of course, when I talk to statists who don't even have a clue what libertarianism is, and when they hear I'm a libertarian, they think that's crazy, and then when they hear I don't want to state at all, they really think I'm crazy. But they often make the argument that in a free market there would be no competition because the biggest player would just take over. However, we can see this today that doesn't happen. I go in a supermarket and the store brand cereal is on the shelf, and I usually buy the store brand. It tastes pretty good and pretty close to the name brand, but it's a lot cheaper. And so there's a couple things going on here that just kind of amaze me. Is one, there is no central planner telling them how much everything has to cost. We presume the store is making money whether they sell Kellogg's or their own name, and the margins are probably pretty close, so they don't care which one you buy. But one's like almost half the price of the name brand. It's pretty incredible. So I guess what I want to say here is, if the quality is pretty close, why don't they keep raising the price on their own brand? And why do they even sell their competitors? Because we're presuming if their name is on the box, Um, someone else's name on a box would be a competitor. Why do they allow the competitor in their store to sell their product?
It's probably because they're stupid idiots and don't know how to run a
And
business.
have no clue what they're doing. And so they
Yeah.
just say, yeah, no. Of course, the reason they do it is because people want it. And some people are willing to pay more money for it. Me, on the other hand, I look at the price and I say, man, if there was a cheaper option that was close in quality, I would probably go for it. And so they provide that.
Would you do that for Oreos though?
I actually do.
You what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I do.
You might be the first person I ever met that said.
I know.
that
I'm
they
not
will
going to
go
say.
for- I didn't even know they make. Do they make actual? Because they have kind of the fake. They're not. They're different from Oreos. I don't even think they're trying to
Nah,
directly
dude.
rip off them.
Next time you come over, you're having the store brand Oreos.
Okay.
Oreos are the best. I'm not going to say they're not.
Okay.
But the store brand, it's pretty good quality, and they're a lot cheaper.
You know what's funny too? That a little side thing, and I actually think I wrote an article about this, but Oreos are actually a knock. I don't even know if they're considered a knockoff, but it was the Hydrox
Yep.
cookie or something was the
Yep.
original.
Yes, you did write an article. That was a long time ago, but yeah, you did write an article on that.
So sometimes knockoffs or whatever end up being better.
Yeah, it's true, and it happened with Oreos. But what I was saying is, when I talk to these status people who just don't even know how to spell economics, you would think that the store would be raising the price of their own brand so they can make more money on it and still be cheaper than the other one. But they figure out somehow that if they raise the price, they're going to make less money because less people will buy. So they have to find the price that fits where they're going to maximize their profits, where it'll be enough of a price decrease to where I'll skip the slightly better name brand to go for a little less quality but a lot less price, and they still make money on it. It's pretty incredible, and that happens everywhere in pretty much any store that sells different brands of different quality. You see it all the time. But what was so fascinating to me about it is that it's the store I was in. It was actually their name on the box, yet they're selling their competitors. And I'm constantly told this would never happen in a market. And as far as I know, there is no law that says you must provide these products. It happens anyway. So that's my free market story. Do you have anything to add to it?
No, just that when you brought it up before we went on, I never really thought of it that way. I mean, obviously I go food shopping and I see and compare, products, but I never thought of it that way. So it just goes to show. That's why I like this little segment we do at the end, because we take kind of the most mundane of things, and you see how incredible it really is.
Exactly.
So.
And it's all around us. We take it for granted. We don't even notice it. We don't even know how good we have it when you let the market work. So
right.
That's all I have for the week. You got anything else?
Nope. Just show notes page again is mcflugel.com/44, because this is episode number 44 and not 43, as I said in the beginning. You'll be able to find, we'll link to all of the things we've done on borders and immigration on there. And then, of course, you'll also find ways to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, as well as subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter. And also, join our weekly newsletter. Just give us your email address, and we'll send you some awesome stuff so you can keep up to date.
And tell your friends.
Yeah.
Your friends you talk to who are just getting into this, send them one of our articles. Have them comment on it. We'd love to talk to them. And that's really, for the most part, our target audience. So anyone who's kind of getting interested, point them our way.
Right. And hopefully, Slappy said in the beginning, for our maybe the people who aren't as libertarian as others, hopefully by the time, if you've started from episode 1, hopefully by the time you're getting to this episode, number 44, we've done some convincing to you. And if you're jumping in at 44 or one of the more recent episodes, why don't you start from the beginning?
Yeah, check out some of our ones.
See what we can do to kind of, if we can help you change your views at all.
At the very least, we'll help you think about things a little harder.
Right. So, okay.
We'll
I think
end
that's
on that note.
Yeah. I have no idea how long we've gone so far. I forgot to look when we started.
Well, thank you for your time. We
Yes.
appreciate it. and we'll catch you next week.
All right. Have a good one.
Peace.